Good morning. Welcome to Forum on this interesting morning with the smoky skies and all of that. So this morning, our program, as you can obviously see, Jason Smith is the Regional 3 Director for CDOT, and I'm really impressed with your resume. I don't normally do this, Jason. I say to the person, you talk about yourself, but I'm going to talk about you. He's been with CDOT for 24 years. Okay. During that time, he held the positions of construction project engineer, roadway design engineer, assistant materials engineer, Grand Junction resident engineer, West program engineer, regional transportation engineer. I think he might be qualified. Region 3, by the way, consists of 15 counties. It has 5,000 lane miles of roadways, 700 bridges, 20,000 culverts, 13 mountain passes, and 7 tunnels. And he manages a budget of almost $300 million. Pretty impressive. Thank you very much for joining us. I assume you came from Grand Junction for this. And one of his assistants will be walking in later, so be prepared for that. Oh, you showed up.
I am.
Well, hi there, welcome. I'm Judy Ann.
Hey, I'm Nate Jean. I'm the Montrose resident engineer, so I'm your local engineer for this residence.
Wow, now we all know, right? So thanks, Nick. So go ahead, Jason, do your thing.
Thank you. Thank you for having us here today. It's always great to be able to come and talk to the communities. So I have 2 presentations today. First, we'll talk about the bridges, Blue Mesa, and then I also have a presentation that's more of a general overview of CDOT. Some of the stuff that Judy Ann just kind of talked about there a little bit, but, in a little more detail, but just overall, our budgets, our delivery projects, that kind of stuff. So we'll kick it off here with the Blue Mesa bridges. This is constantly changing. We just did a public open house last night, so I tried to take some of those slides, combine it with others, so hopefully it's all accurate and it kind of tells the story here. But yeah, it's very dynamic, as you know right now. And then Nate can jump up here and help me. He's out there working with the staff on a daily basis, so he has a lot of good information to add and a lot of detail. So. As Judy Ann said, my office is in Grand Junction. That's our regional headquarters. It's for the northwest corner of the state with 15 counties. So, yeah, we'll jump right in here. So, you guys know, where this is located at, and your Blue Mesa Reservoir. It is the 2 bridges. It's the Lake Fork Bridge and the Middle Bridge, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So, they were built in 1963. These bridges, they were built with a special steel, and you might have heard some of this or read it in some of the local articles that have been coming out. But this T1 steel at the time was kind of the new thing, right? It's high strength steel, and you think, well, it's high strength steel, it's big, it's better, stronger, more durable. The problem with high strength steel is it is more brittle. With the higher strength it is, it's more brittle. Well, as long as it's controlled in an environment, it's great. Well, what happened here was whenever they were welding the joints, it's not in the fabrication of the melting and the molding of the girders themselves and the steel, it's when they welded it together and built it into beams. And those welded joints that are not as controlled, and in the 1960s, they didn't have the technology to help them control it as well as we do today. Well, what happened is when they welded those joints together, there's what we call anomalies. Well, these anomalies are little hydrogen pockets, or might be little tiny hairline cracks that were built into these welds. So you'll hear us talk about anomalies a lot. What they are is little micro defects. And so FHWA asked us a couple years ago, they sent out a memo because they were starting to see across the state some issues with some of these bridges that were built out of this material. And so they were concerned enough, they asked all the states to go look at their inventory of all their bridges, find out what bridges they had, go and do a thorough inspection of the bridges, and then give them a plan of how they're going to remedy it if they do have any issues with any of the states with any of the bridges. So CDOT, we have thousands and thousands of bridges, as you know. had to start our process then of digging through all of our old plans and files, because it's not like it was out there in a computer database and we just punched it in. What bridges are built out of T1 steel? We had to have somebody physically go back to every set of plans, do research on each one of those bridges to find out, are they built out of this special steel? What was the design? What was the material used? So it took a long time for us to go back through all these thousands of sets of plans and find out what we have in our inventory. Well, we're pretty fortunate we only had 2 bridges in the entire state. We're unfortunate that they're right there. And they impact our communities close to home here. But in ways that is good, that they were both there together. It makes it a little more convenient, a little easier for us to tackle, come up with a remedy. So we got out there, once we identified it, we started our preliminary inspections this spring, started to crawl around looking. We sent guys out there, they hung some ropes, they had, I think we have some photos here that you'll see, some snooper trucks that we do inspections off of, and they started doing more of a visual inspection on the bridges as the first step. Well, as you know, jump in here. As they started climbing around, they did start to find some things, right? And that's what caused us to be in the state we're in today, is they did find a crack on the first girder. And that first crack was found on that center span, which is span 6. And so just to kind of give you a little idea, this is a 10-span bridge. The middle bridge we're talking about here is 10 spans total. Only spans 5, 6, and 7 in the center are built out of this high-strength steel. And in some of these photos, you'll be able to see a little bit of difference in how they're built. It's a different design than we have on a lot of our other bridges around the state, and it's a pin and hanger kind of design, which is kind of odd. But it also is a design that doesn't have much redundancy. There's only 2 girder lines, so 2 of these big girders run down the bridge. Anymore, we design bridges to have more girder lines, which gives you more redundancy. So only having 2 girder lines whenever you have a crack in one means, that's fracture critical. If that one girder happens to go ahead and crack to the point of failure, the whole bridge will fail. So that's why we're very concerned with this, right? And we're taking it so serious, is that there's not redundancy in here, so we have to go in and reinforce and stabilize this bridge. So when we first found the first crack, we were very concerned, but we thought we can mitigate this because it's one of the girders. We started working on that design immediately. The problem was whenever we started shutting down the traffic and we kept looking with our inspectors, we found a second crack in the other girder on that same span. We were going to try to keep traffic running temporarily the best we could, but with 2 cracks, one in each girder, we decided, that was the time we had to play it safe. We didn't feel good about keeping traffic on the structure. We load restricted it. We even pulled all of our staff, all of our trucks off of the structure until we could run all the calculations and really get into a thorough design to look at the loading. So that took, a few weeks to try to get everything going, get a design team set up, our contractor. We moved fairly quick. As you guys probably know, things seems kind of slow, but as one of these projects has moved fast. It's kind of touchy. So there you can see the picture of the structure. This is when there was no water back in the 1960s, a photo of it. I wish it was like that today to make things a lot easier in ways of not having water under us. But you can see these deep girders, how thick they are. They're 12 foot tall. This one on the end over here is one of the adjacent ones that are built with the other steel, which is more of a normal 36 KSI steel. These are 100 KSI steel. The orange there. It's only the 3 in the center span. Here you can see kind of, talking about those weld anomalies. The guys out there inspecting, some of the guys hanging off of ropes whenever we did limit our vehicles to be on the structure. Everything was having to be done off of ropes. And so we were having to drop them down with their equipment, testing equipment, and they were hanging there trying to scan, trying to grind the paint off. There's a very thick paint that's on these structures to protect them, a coating. So before you can do an inspection, you have to grind all that off. Our inspection then includes, first it's a visual inspection, but then you grind it off, and then what we have is a mag particle testing. And then there's also an ultrasonic testing. So it's a newer form of testing for welds that shows you those microscopic kind of details. That shows up those anomalies. We did only find the 2 cracks though, which were, one of them was about 3 inches long, one of them was about 4 inches long. And that's the only 2 cracks we found. The rest of them we found probably, I think it's been up around over 100 some anomalies. So it's quite a few of those that we were finding. And what those are is, like I said, welds that are just not perfect. You know, they're imperfect welds. Here's just kind of an idea. It shows you the middle bridge. Those red dots that you see there are where we found these anomalies from the testing. So you can see they're scattered all over the structure. Each one of those is in a welded joint though. So, and we can't go back and re-weld them, right? A lot of people, we've got comments about, well, just go grind it off and re-weld it. Well, again, this is special steel and it has to be controlled. So if we went to go out there on site and grind it and weld it, it's not a controlled environment. And what that would do is actually make that weld more brittle, and it would be a weaker structure because we did that. So if we could take the girders off just the foundation, take them to a controlled environment where we could control the temperature and the environment around them, and we could raise that temperature up, weld it, and then lower that temperature in a controlled environment. You know, we could control it enough that we would feel comfortable with a welding process. But since that's not possible, our solution right now is to come up with these gusset plates. And what that is just really going over each of these joints and taking a plate of steel. And when I say plate, they vary in thicknesses, but anywhere from like 1.5 inches up to 2.5 inches of steel. And then you basically just put a patch over the top of that weld, and you put bolts all over that thing. So one fact here is we've ordered over 60,000 bolts, 3 truckloads of bolts that are going to help us here. 380 tons of steel that we're going to put, and that's for both structures for the repairs, but that's just kind of an interesting fact. So let's load it up. When we did shut it down, you know, the middle bridge, it had huge impacts, as you guys know, to the communities. We're very fortunate that we had Gunnison County as a partner working with us, because CDOT, we cannot route traffic on county roads. We have to use our system. We can't, take over the county roads. So if the counties are willing to partner with us, then we can utilize their roadways. In this case, we're very fortunate that Gunnison County, they stepped right up immediately and said, yes, we could use County Road 26 for the Lake City cutoff, and we started modifying it. At the time, it was covered with snow. It wasn't open back in April 18th, whenever this all happened. And so we had to send our CDOT crews out there, along with Gunnison County crews, to start removing the snow off the road, get the drifts cleared. And then the Monday after, so that all happened on a Thursday. They cleared snow all weekend, and by Monday we had a contractor on board, which is Kiewit Infrastructure, and they were starting to bring in gravel to reinforce the road. And then we spent about roughly 2 weeks of working with the contractor of adding the gravel and fixing soft spots and making the repairs so we could use County Road 26 as our detour route. Slide. So where we stand today is there's about 7 passage times. That's Thursday through Tuesday. On Wednesday, we only have 5 passage times on County Road 26. Apologize to see more. Sometimes it's working, sometimes it's not. Am I too far away? Here again, I just wanted to show you a rendering. This is what our design team come up with for some of our repairs. So on that bottom flange, which is that shot that goes along the bottom, you can see there's a blue plate along there. That's what we're calling the global reinforcement. So we're plating the entire underside. And then up above that, there's isolated spots in these weld joints that we're going ahead and plating. So the blue spots are just where we're making repairs. We have done the 4 critical repairs, so we, over the cracks, and then a couple other places that we had a lot of these anomalies, we identified 4 spots that were what we called critical. So by July 3rd, that was our goal, was to get the roadway open partially to some vehicles. From day one, our goals were safety of everybody, including our crews and the traveling public, and get traffic back on as soon as possible for emergency services. Second goal then was for passenger vehicles, and then the third goal was to open it up for legal loads. So we've been able now to open it up to passenger vehicles. It's limited on how many crossings, but we have been able to open it up to passenger vehicles and emergency services. We're not able to put CMP trucks on the structure yet, so we are load restricted at this time. Here's a couple of the bottom plates that we put on. You can see these are about 27 foot long, about I think 30 inches wide. Those are some of the bolts that we're having used. You can see all those holes that's in those plates though, and that's the bolt pattern. So when they're putting these on, they're having to go in and drill all of these holes into these girders and then put these plates on and attach them. So it takes some time for the teams. It's a lot of work, and it's a kind of a slow process, right? So each one of those plates right there to 236 bolts. Here's just a couple photos of them, putting the plates in and lowering them down. It's a kind of an interesting process because these have to come all the way down and up underneath the structure. So they had to be kind of use rigging. They were able to lower it down with the crane, but then had to use winching techniques to bring it up and under and hold it in place while they mounted it. Underneath, we've had to install what we call a quick deck for the team to work on. So you can see there that it kind of hangs by chains and attaches up underneath. So they have a platform that they can drill off of and install. And then just here's some more photos of them after they've placed the critical repairs. And then here's our July 3rd, whenever we were able to open it up to limited traffic that morning. So some of the repairs are also in the top of the flange. Unfortunately, we can't get to them from the bottom side, so we're having to go cut holes at the top. I think roughly 10 foot by about 2 foot. And so they're having to cut through the deck, down through the rebar, make the repairs and reinforcement on top of the girder and in that flange. And then they have to go back in, splice back in the rebar and pour concrete back. So we've got about 6 of these opened up and repaired right now. They'll put the concrete back in the next few days. Another 4 of them, I think they've started opening. So that's one line, girder line. As soon as they get those completed, they'll flop traffic over to the other direction and they'll start working on the other side. So that's some of the critical repairs up top. Okay, so that was the middle bridge. And like I said, we have 2 of these bridges, right? So everybody's been anxious about the Lake Fork Bridge. What's that going to look like? Why have we waited? Well, we had our hands full, honestly, with the middle bridge and trying to figure it out. And we knew, the Lake Fork Bridge is just a smaller version of the middle bridge. So we were like, well, if we can get our hands wrapped around what we need to do, how to fix the middle bridge, we can take that same design and those repairs and mimic it pretty much on that Lake Fork Bridge. Plus, we knew whenever we got into the other bridge, there's a possibility that we're going to have to shut traffic down and limit, who can come and go from the Sapanero area. And that's big impacts to that community. So we're trying to minimize as much as we can the inconvenience to everyone. So it's starting to get kind of complicated. So if you're making a trip to Gunnison, you really have to look closely of what you're driving, one thing, but then also the times, right? And which way you can go, what's opening, because they're not exactly the same. So what we're looking at right now on the Lake Fork Bridge, it's not limited to CMVs. We're allowing all legal loads on it. So during daytime, we're doing a single lane traffic control. So that's just alternating traffic. You get stopped for hopefully 10, 15 minutes is all. You wait for your cue, pilot car takes you across. We're allowing all vehicles, that's, passenger vehicles, pickups, trailers, RVs, trucks. At nighttime though, we're shutting it down from that 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. That's for the contractor to be able to work on. So this will all start on August 12th. So like I said, it gets a little complicated because then you cross over this bridge. Well, now you still have to go over Middle Bridge. Well, it has different restrictions, right? It still has the loading restrictions. So there is no trucks allowed. There's no RVs allowed. There's no trailers allowed. It's only really passenger vehicles, pickups, motorcycles. So those people that are not allowed to go over Middle Bridge will still have to go and hit one of the crossings and the times of on County Road 26 is a detour to make that route down to get to Gunnison. So it's kind of confusing and complicated depending on the time of day, what you're driving, of which route you'll be taking. So we're trying to message this as best as we can. We know it's kind of confusing and hard, but again, we're trying to open it up as much as possible. We could have restricted this bridge, so it made it easier, so it's one message, but we're trying to give as much as possible, right? Get trucks across there, then they can use County Road 26. For some reason, we have to shut down completely. We haven't found anything out on Lake Fork Bridge that's concerned, like a crack. So that's why we're able to not limit it right now. And we feel comfortable keeping trucks on it. If some reason over the next few weeks while we're finishing up our inspection, if we have to find something and have to completely close it, we have prepped County Road 25 with Gunnison County to use it as an alternate route. The bad part about County Road 25 is it's not as good of a route. It's a longer route. It has switchbacks on that south side. So we have to limit it to trucks that are only 50 foot in length. And so it gets more complicated. There's more people live along that route. So trying to control traffic and speeds, it's all a little bit more challenging. So we're really trying to utilize County Road 26 right now as our main detour route for the locals up in that area, and try to keep it open as much as possible. And again, this is just kind of talking about some of the vehicles and what's allowed over Lake Fork Bridge. We are looking and trying to do some kind of credentialing for Sapanero. So last year, whenever we had the emergency on State Highway 133, the culvert washout, if you remember, Paonia people were allowed to pass through there because we had a little shoe fly detour. We used a credentialing kind of technique where we printed them up kind of a sticker and they put in their car, and so locals then could pass through the project. We're looking at something like that for the Sapanero community. So then they can pass at night across the bridge. As long as we don't have cranes in the way or material sitting out in the middle of the road, we'd be able to let them through. So we do our best to accommodate if they need to get in or out. And that's just kind of some final pictures. That's kind of my slide deck. I know there's probably lots of questions. We can have a few questions and answers before I get into my next presentation. So, yeah.
Okay, I'm coming. That's my job, Jason. This is why I get my weekly exercise, huh, guys?
Thank you. I have a question about crossing the Middle Bridge in that time frame from 6 a.m. till 8:30 a.m. If I'm in line there at 8 o'clock and there's still 30 cars ahead of me and 8:30 comes, am I still going to be able to cross that bridge, or are you going to turn me around someplace?
So we've told the flaggers that there's people in line in the traffic queue, let them across.
Great, thank you.
So, so once they clear after 8:30 though, they clear queues, there's nobody in line anymore, we're cutting it off at that point.
Okay, thank you.
I hope the flaggers are following that. We're not out there on site and controlling all the time, so we're trying to stay engaged as much as possible, but that's the direction that's been given.
Great, thank you.
Jason, do you have any idea when this might be totally finished?
So right now, we're really looking at that November time frame. All of our schedules, our goal is we don't want to be out there, in winter. Locals know that the place is not a good place to be during the winter months. It's pretty extreme and harsh, and that bridge deck is extremely challenging to work on. And that wind blows constantly up there during the afternoon, and it is extremely cold. So it'd be challenging for us to work through the winter. So our goal right now is to be done with both bridges, at least to the point where we can put full traffic back on. We might have to come back in the spring and touch up something, but our goal is to have full loads and no restrictions over the winter.
That was my question, but also, will the present schedule of 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, will that stay in place until then?
We're analyzing that as we go, so we're hoping to open it up and give traffic more as we can. Currently, that's what it's set at, but we're kind of on a weekly basis reviewing that and seeing, working with the county, looking at their schedule, looking at our schedule, and just kind of trying to, balance it out the best we can. We're talking to the contractor, what they're able to do with their crews. They have about, I think they said over 100 craftspeople out there between the two structures, or going to have, as soon as they get work going on the Lake Fork Bridge. So, there's a lot of equipment that's needing to cross and come over, and materials that they're hauling back and forth. So, trying to figure out how they can mobilize some of their equipment, some of their materials, and get them staged, and then we can keep as much traffic going as possible. The other part of that is that traffic creates, that vibration into the bridge deck. Those guys are hanging underneath of it for the scaffolding, right? It's hard to work. They're drilling these precise holes, and that bridge, every time one of those trucks, and you guys have stood on a bridge when a truck comes across it or some heavy loads, they move, right? They're made to move. So it's kind of a tough situation, right? Trying to figure out what we can do with traffic, but yet give the contractor as much time as they can to do the work. Currently, that's what we're sticking with for those times, but we are assessing.
I think about the many times I've crossed that bridge in 60 years. And I never realized how much that bridge moves, particularly in the middle of the day, from the wind, and how that's impacted you as workers. But it has to have impacted us as traffic, right?
Yeah, it's challenging. I mean, we have to get straps for the hard hats, because it'll blow your hard hat off when you're trying to work under that thing, the wind's blowing them.
So going forward with this, what we're doing now, is there a lifespan to the corrections we're doing? Are we gonna have to put an RFQ for a new bridge, or is that where we're headed, or?
Yeah, so, there's been a lot of discussions about how to take this on. This is very expensive, right? You guys probably heard, we've had to come up with about $111 million for these two structures right now, is our estimate that we're working off of. So big decisions were made early on of, do you repair them? Do we start looking at just replacement? For timing, a new bridge probably take about 5 years, honestly.
Not as bad as I thought.
At a minimum. That's if that's if we could get the National Park Service, all the environmental, groups, everybody to work really well with us. I would say that would be the quickest we could ever replace these bridges. So with that, knowing how long it takes, because it's about probably at least a 3-year design process and then 2 years of construction. As you know, it's not easy, as we showed in these pictures here. When they originally built these, there was no water. Well, now with water in the reservoir, we'd have to bring in specialized equipment to go down and build the bridges. So that's something we don't have in the state. We just don't build a lot of structures in the water. It's probably more of a coastal or some other state that has a lot of that water, has that equipment. We'd have to bring that in. But so we made the decision early on. We're going to repair these two structures and invest in them. How long that gets us? That's a good question, right? They're old structures. They're 60 years old. So we feel confident that our repairs here for the girder part of it, we're going to get 20, 25 years. There's still substructure, right? The substructure's still old. All that concrete and everything going down. Inspections show it's still good. So we've been doing underwater inspections on these. We have a 2-year cycle that we do inspections on these bridges. And they just went back in and did the underwater this spring. Everything looked good, no concerns, but you never know when things really start to kind of deteriorate more rapidly. So to sit here and say we're going to get 50 years, I don't think so. At some point that concrete's really going to start to age quickly. We're going to start seeing that deterioration increase rather fast, and then we're going to have to make a decision at that point. We're hoping right now, we think, the loading, the calculations, as long as nothing extreme happens, we'll get at least 20, 25 years out of these structures now with these repairs. So we're pretty confident in that. But we are talking about, should we get in there before it gets too extreme again? Because the last thing we want to do is let them get to the point we have to completely restrict them and not allow traffic to replace them, right?
Yeah.
You want to be able to put traffic on these bridges while you're building a new bridge. That's ultimately the best way of doing it, right? So it impacts everyone the least. So we're trying to look in our cycle. Unfortunately, new structures are going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars each one of them. Very expensive. Our program right now does not have the capacity to handle that, so we'd have to figure out the funding to even, kind of put that in the planning process and then get the process started of design, clearances, working with the national park, getting on into construction.
Another question before he moves on to his other presentation? Okay, I see 4 of you, I'll be there.
T1 steel seems a little temperamental in some ways and gets brittle. Are the bolts that you're using for the repairs in any way causing other problems or potentially other problems down the line?
Not that we know of. That's a good question. Yeah, sometimes your repairs are not ideal either, so that's a great question. Yeah, they're drilling all these holes in the bridge. It's a concern, right? This repair's been used in other places. They haven't seen any problems, but the long-term impacts, back to that, how long are we gonna get out of this? Are we gonna see some problems because we've added, one thing is we're adding 380 tons of extra metal steel onto the weight onto these structures. That's gonna wear on something. These bridges all have different components on where they sit. Again, we talked about the movement. They're constantly moving, there's friction, so they've got pads, they've got these, what we call these pin and hanger joints. So there's these big hangers that hang that center section that we're now putting more weight on. So it's all very complicated, right? And so we have a team of engineers working on this and running calculations like I've never seen before,
That's gotta be
honestly.
tough.
And it's hard because it's not a new bridge, right? Our bridge designers they're very confident that whenever they can build their own bridge, it's a brand new bridge. But whenever you start retrofitting an existing bridge and doing something like this in the repair, it's tough. And they don't all agree, I can tell you. We have some hard discussions behind the scenes, of what this calculation is, and what this loading is, and what the rating should be. And, like I said, engineers, they're engineers, and they don't disagree.
Let's do something we've never done before and see if it works.
Yeah, so it's a tough one, it really is. I'll hand it to them. Like I said, I leave the calculations up to them. I've got an engineering degree, but I couldn't even think about tackling anything like this. So I'm glad we have them on board. We've got experts around the nation, honestly. So we brought in Michael Baker Group. They have people scattered out. They're T1 steel experts. We brought in welding experts. We brought in the best bridge experts that worked on similar bridges to this. So basically, any specialist we could find that has anything to do with this, we brought them in to be on our team. So we've got probably close to 100 people working on the design right now, between our CDOT team, our staff bridge at headquarters, the consultants, specialists, drafters. I mean, it's just crazy the amount of people.
Do we have a budget for, is it just open?
Well, it's all budgeted that 111 million that we've asked for. So.
And the same is true for my guys in the field overseeing the construction. We've got people from all over the country out there, to technical bridge inspectors to make sure that he was doing the job the right way. So.
Is there a difference in materials between freshwater and saltwater bridges?
That's a good question. I don't know much about it, honestly. I think the biggest thing is, the steel, the reinforcement that's in there is always epoxy coated. Other than that, I don't think that the concrete that they use is anything in particular, but that's a good question.
What's the very best place for us to find up-to-date information on the detour?
So, Gunnison County is posting stuff on their detour, so it's a little complicated. We're trying to update everything on our website with the US 50 bridge. It's Billy, I think US 50 bridge. I don't know how to slide there too. So you go to the project website, we're trying to connect and work with Gunnison County on their county road stuff. Again, we can't control it, we're trying to work with them, we're trying to mimic what they're saying and post it, but really, go to ours first.
And ours first means CDOT.
CDOT.
CDOT, and then under CDOT, you go, so it just gets confusing when you go in there.
Yeah, let me get that over to Julianne, and we'll send out the information to you guys, if that works. I don't have it. I've got it somewhere here. But if you go to US 50 Bridge, I think if you just Google that, it should come up with our website. We have a special website. So you don't have to drill down, you don't have to go to the CDOT, webpage and then drill down. You should be able just to Google US 50 Bridge.
And it'll be associated with CDOT.
And it's under CDOT.
And then we need the Gunnison one for the detours.
Well, go to ours and see what we have posted. I'm not even sure that I think we've got all the 7 passage times on every day, or for at least the 6 days a week, and then the 5 on Wednesday posted that shows you the exact times each direction. So you should be able to see that all on ours, but if you can't for some reason, you can go to Gunnison counties and link up there.
It just seems like when things change, it's hard to know what's correct.
Yeah. And County Road 25 is accessible right now. It's just from each side. They do have a barrier across the middle at milepost 9. So you can't go from one end all the way to the other. But you could go from the south end to mile marker 9 or from the north end to mile marker 9. You just can't go all the way through.
On 25.
That's on County Road 25.
The 26 you can go.
26 we're using right
And
now.
that's open all the time.
It's 7 times a day.
That's right, okay.
So that's the hard part, right? So you have to hit one of those times. So we're holding traffic, we're only doing one way at a time, and it's pilot car. So we bring traffic across, and that's roughly an hour. That's what it is. And then we bring the other direction across for another hour. We go back with the other, so it's back and forth.
But then as of August 12th, we'll have 3 things we need to look into, right?
Yep.
So, but hopefully we find all of that on that one.
And that's where we're trying to consolidate it all on our project website there, US 50 Bridge.
Right, thank you.
So a question for you here. So I've had a lot of people contacting me out of Hinsdale County on some pretty significant economic impacts that they've had on their tourism. It sounded like their lodging, everything else like that. It sounded like the CDOT or the state was trying to go up and do some economic impacting or other stuff like that kind of going through. I didn't know if you guys were trying to go up and go into Hinsdale County with a similar presentation, because there's some really concerned folks in that part of the country.
No, we haven't been up there yet. We did, I know Senator Hickenlooper went up and met with Gunnison County. I went up for that meeting. Met with a lot of the business owners, heard some of their concerns. I don't think they've had a similar meeting out in Hinsdale County. I know they're heavily impacted as well, right? But we're hearing right now about 50%. A lot of the businesses are only seeing what the normal business that they have on a yearly basis. So they're way down right now. The messaging is hard because a lot of the message kind of says like US 50 is closed, right? Well, it's kind of closed, it's restricted, right? So trying to message, you can get through. It's not easy necessarily. You need to go to the website, but it is open in a sense that you can get through or around using the detours. So we're trying to figure out our messaging, trying to work with some of the businesses on how we can do a little better job of that, because it has been, highly impactful.
So just a comment for you. So just to make sure, the people that I've talked to in Hinsdale, they're not Gunnison, and they're going through. So they're feeling a little bit alienated from some of that stuff. So if you guys could go off and maybe do intentionality to Hinsdale to probably talk to some of those folks, just because of the impacts that they've had on some of those businesses, especially some of the economic aspects, would really be at least a thought for you to think of.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, we'll reach out to them and have some discussion. Now, one of the unfortunate parts is, right, so when this first started, and we shut the bridge down, that very first day I got the call, and like, we need to shut the bridge down, that Thursday, April 18th. From that point on, we knew the impacts were big. Well, what happened was we shut it down on our own. It wasn't a natural disaster. We went ahead and asked the governor to declare this an emergency. He went ahead and declared that declaration for emergency, which helped us with some of our funding on our end. Unfortunately, what it didn't help with is some of the stuff when it comes to federal emergencies, right? Because this was not a natural disaster. So we reached out to the federal government and asked, hey, can you guys help here? Can you help businesses? Because then a lot of times when there's a flood, a hurricane, fire, whatever, they'll come in and give some assistance. We've asked for that assistance. They said, well, this is not a federal emergency. It's an emergency because it impacts the locals in the sense that we shut the bridges down, but the bridges are still standing. They're like, you're just doing maintenance on your bridge. That's kind of their aspect of it. It's like, well, no, it is an emergency to us, right? Because of the impacts to the community. So it's kind of a tough situation we're in. You know, we've said in ways the community probably would have benefited more if the bridge would have failed in some way, which none of us want, right? At least they would have called it a national disaster at that point, and then we could get federal participation. Right now, the federal government is not their mandate. Unfortunately, it is. It comes down to the definitions of what a disaster is. So I know a lot of the businesses have reached out and tried to look for any funding they can get. I think Kevin Klein has been on a lot of our calls. He's with our emergency response group. He's trying to help them. I think they've set up a lot of loans, you know, different things that they can go and apply for. But again, it's just a loan, and so it doesn't really help a lot of the businesses. They don't necessarily need a loan, they need more business. That's what they need. So it's a challenge that we've been hearing a lot about. It's a tough one to overcome, and I don't know how we can do a better job, but we'll definitely reach out and stuff.
So Jason, we're getting close on time, so do you want to start your second presentation?
Yeah, I can freeze the riff rail. Okay, yeah, real quick here. So we do annual meetings with our counties. Again, we have 15 counties, so we just finished them up this year. We did virtual this year, and you know, we just tried to get out and give them a little information as we go. So what I present on is just, you know, Region 3 up in the northwest corner. You know, kind of overall some of the information that we have. You know, we're broken into maintenance and engineering. You know, quite a few, you know, in our group, and then we have what we have is our specialty units that support as well, and I'll get into a little more detail here. And then a traffic and safety group. There's just a map, kind of shows you the corner of the states. There's 5 regions in the state. We're what we call Region 3 in the northwest corner. We do kind of have that panhandle that goes down into Hinsdale County because they really tie to Gunnison area. So, you know, Highway 149 going down just seems to work a little better with our region. Julianne hit a lot of this stuff on what we have in our region. We do have about, you know, close to now 600 employed positions, I'll say. We don't have them all filled. We've got about 100 vacancies right now. We're still recovering after kind of the COVID stuff and coming out of that. We were down more than that. 100 sounds like a lot, but we were up, I think, at one point 170 vacancies, and most of those are honestly in our maintenance section and snowplow operators. So we were really struggling there for a while. We made great strides in hiring and improvements. We've offered some different benefits, things like that, made some changes to the structure and pay for our snowplow operators, which has helped. So, but we still have quite a few vacancies we're continually trying to work to fill. We have transportation commissioners. Barb Bowman, she's out of the country right now. She's our new transportation commissioner for this area. I don't know if you guys have ever seen her in any meetings, but they meet on a monthly basis, and our transportation commission approves all our budgets. So whenever we had to go ask for money for these emergency bridges, we had to do a presentation to the commission in Denver, and they have to give approval. So it's not like money's just sitting there and we can grab it. We actually have to go ask for it and get that through a commission that controls it. And then here's, I can send these slides over, Julianne. You know, I give this out. If you click on our names there in blue, it actually brings up our emails in the electronic version of this. And you'll be able to contact any of us and my team there, and you see, we have some of our section leaders. I focused this year a little bit on a couple of the highlights. One of the things was culverts, And a lot of it was because we had our emergency last year on State Highway 133. Nate and his team handled that. They had to come in and do that replacement. It was an interesting one. Emergencies are never good, right? They cost you a lot of money, a lot more than it would cost just to do a planned replacement, unfortunately. So we never look forward to an emergency. One thing is you're not prepared for it, you don't have the staff. The only good part about an emergency is you get to push things through a little quicker in a streamlined process. But other than that, it's more expensive and it's uncontrolled. So we try to avoid them. So here I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the culvert funds that we got from the Transportation Commission last year. There was some extra funding that come from the federal government to CDOT. They took a portion of that money, our Transportation Commission did, and they allocated it just for culverts. And you kind of see some of the numbers here, and just there on the map, you can see some of them that we identified as our priority culverts across the state. That, just a little bit worse shape that need replaced that we've identified. So Region 3, in this northwest corner of the state, we were able, out of that $65 million that Transportation Commission gave us, our region was able to get about $27 million of that. You guys probably think, wow, that's a lot of money. And it is a lot of money. But it's not nearly enough to handle all our needs, unfortunately. So that $27 million, we're only going to be able to hit about 46 culverts. We have about 295 that we identified with our team that we'd really like to be looking at and working on. This $27 million will handle a portion of those. That's not going very far, and it's not every culvert's equal either. There's one right here that Nick's working on within the design right now. It's just out to the north of town here. What's the name of it?
It's on Cedar Creek, so right there before you get to CDOT as you're coming into Montrose from Delta there on 50. So it crosses underneath 50 as well as the frontage roads there. So that's one of the ones that we will be working on very soon here.
And it's a big box culvert. So we call them culverts, whether it's a metal culvert that's smaller or up to a big culvert that's a concrete culvert. It's more of a box shape. This is one of the bigger culverts. It's going to be hard to rebuild, really, because it's going to impact, US 50, frontage roads, everything, so the coordination. That one culvert is $10 million of that $27 million. So again, they're not equal. Most of our culverts are small. A lot of them can replace for about $500,000. This one's going to be closer to that $10 million. So a lot of that money coming to this community. So that's good. It's a big need. Another thing, just, we're expanding. CDOT's multimodal. When I came 24 years ago to CDOT, we were focused pretty much on highways. We were just starting to talk a little bit about the other transportation modes. Over the last 20 years, we've really expanded. One of the things is the bus service. That's part of CDOT. You hear about the bus thing, the Outrider, the Snow Sting, the Pegasus. All that's tied under that bus thing, and it's at our division of transit rail. We're expanding. Here's a map, kind of the current routes. You can see here in that phase 2 in 2024, it's kind of where we're at today. What's coming over to the western slope, we're looking at expanding that over the next year, going into that phase 3. We're trying to get 13 to 15 routes over to the west slope. And they're not all full 100% routes. Some of those are just coming over and stopping, up at the ski resorts. Some of them are coming all the way to Grand Junction. Some of them they come all the way down and connect into Durango area. So, but really trying to tie our network together across the state. We have a study going on right now that's working with the local transit authorities, trying to figure out all the gaps, because it's one thing, we have a bus that drops people off. Well, how do those people get to their destination when they get to that community? Well, hopefully there's a local transit authority they can work with, and they get on a different bus and get right where they need to be, make their appointments or get to the locations and visit. So a lot of good things happening. Hopefully we'll be expanding that even more in the future. Another thing that's, again, multimodal, we're starting to look more at rail service. You've probably heard some about the Front Range passenger rail that they've been studying and looking for funding for, trying to figure out how to connect like Fort Collins all the way down Colorado Springs area, to get commuters. But they're also looking at Northwest Rail now, with some of the rail lines being abandoned or less use. Union Pacific Railroad reached out to us, wanting to partner, and said, hey, we've got these rails sitting here that they could be used for passenger rail. They've been used really just for coal in the past years, but now with less coal production, power plants going down, they're available. So we're looking at maybe putting some passenger trains up from Winter Park area all the way over to the Craig area. Here, just some breakdowns of our maintenance sections, what they spend in different counties every year. So you can kind of see it's not big dollars. We have to stretch our dollars. Judy had said we have about $300 million. Sounds like a lot of money, but if you look at that corner of the state and all the needs we have, you start dividing the money up to here and there. It's amazing how quick it goes, and there's not enough. I'll tell you that. So we struggle with our budgets right now. We just don't have enough in our assets and trying to divide it all up. But you can see some of the items there that maintenance works on. We track some of the road surface, the roadside facilities appearance, just traffic services. They've got a lot of structures they work on. Biggest portion of our budget goes to snow and ice removal. I mean, it is very expensive. Products are going up that we put on the road, whether it's the icers and sand. Just our plow trucks have almost doubled in cost in the last few years. So everything is just skyrocketing on us right now. But, we have Hanging Lake Tunnel. I always wish I could take everybody through it. A lot of people don't even know what Hanging Lake Tunnel consists of, but we have a structure in the middle of Hanging Lake Tunnel. We have a whole staff that work inside the tunnel. We man out of there the operations and controls of the other tunnels on the western slope. So they can see all the cameras. They got extra cameras. There's ones you can see on Co-Trip, but there's also cameras others that are not available to the public that they man out of the tunnel there. And they can see when somebody breaks down. We need to send a team out there. So they really watch Glenwood Canyon close, because as you know, if somebody breaks down, it's a big issue for us. So we have to get people out there immediately to get that vehicle removed. We have an amazing amount of fires, different things, vehicles catching on fire in that canyon, vehicles breaking down, just for the safety of everyone, whether it's the person that broke down or it's the travelers that are coming around the curve up on them. We do our best to get out there and get those things removed. Okay. Yeah, and then just interesting fact there, snow plowing, over about 1.5 million miles that we plowed last year. So there's a lot of time spent in plows. That just talks about some of our priorities for maintenance. Here it just gets into a little of our projects. You can find a lot of this information if you drill down. It's buried in there in some places on the internet, but we do have dashboards, and we try to post and be transparent with our projects and our funding. So a lot of this information is out there. Local agency programs, one thing I was just there's a lot of money going to locals over the last few years with these programs. So the kind of grant programs that we're able to give out, they apply for the funding, they set up their own projects, and then it's a pass-through from us to them to make community improvements to help with the transportation system, whether it's bike ped improvements or other improvements for safety in the community. And then this is just kind of statewide budgets. We've got about $2 billion that we work with statewide. And our budget comes from taxpayers, gas tax, and then your registration fees. That's where our budget's coming from. Well, gas tax, it hasn't changed in 30 years. It has been set stagnant. 18 cents federal and 22 cents for state, that's what we get. So when people drive less, COVID really hit us hard, right? Nobody's driving. Less fuel being sold. It hit our budgets big time. Things like that. EVs, electric vehicles, more efficient vehicles, less gas being sold. So our budgets get hit, right? I mean, they stay pretty stagnant. Even though we still have to repair the roads and everything, costs are going up. Our budgets stay pretty constant over the years, minor increases. And then this just gets into, we're doing our planning this year. You guys are welcome to participate. Michelle's here. We're doing this effort with our planning regions. We go out, we prioritize projects. They ask for community involvement. They set up websites and do polls. So if you have projects, you're passionate about transportation, you can give your input and help influence, what gets built in your community. So I encourage you, if you have that desire, please speak up and get involved.
And Jason, I'm cutting you off.
Okay, yeah, I'm pretty much done. There's a lot to say. Thank
Oh,
you
okay.
so much.
I thought you were going to say 6 more things.
No.
So please help me.